In a bid to boost local production and create jobs, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu yesterday approved a 6-month temporary ban on the export of raw shea nut to curb informal trade and grow the country's shea industry. Vice President Kashim Shettima, who announced the president's directive during a multi-stakeholder meeting at State House in Abuja, called on the Federal Ministry of Finance and other relevant government agencies to fast-track enforcement of the ban. Minister of Agriculture and Food Security says the presidential ban aims to curb informal trade, raise processing capacity, and capture more value for the sector. Abubakar Kyari, speaking at the presidential villa, adds that the move is expected to boost Nigeria's share value chain and generate about $300 million annually in the short term.
What has just happened is an address and a meeting organized by His Excellency the Vice President, Senator Kashim Shettima, GCON, on the directive given by His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, on the temporary ban, export ban of raw shea nuts. And by that directive, the Federal Minister of Agriculture and Food Security is expected to submit to the Attorney General, Minister of Justice, the process where the gazetting of that export ban will take effect.
Moving on to another story. Meanwhile, the International Monetary Fund and International Finance Corporation have stated that the President Bola Tinubu administration has done a good job in implementing structural reforms required to make Nigeria a more attractive investment destination. IMF and IFC urged the Tinubu administration to continue to travel on its chosen path without backsliding, because the government's reform measures had started yielding macroeconomic stability, deceleration of inflationary pressure, foreign exchange market stability, and growing foreign reserves. Now on to security. National Security Advisor Malam Nuhu Ribadu yesterday reiterated the federal government's promise to relentlessly fight terrorism and hunt down terrorists threatening the citizens, declaring, and I quote, "We will hunt them, we will find them, and we will bring them to justice," end of quote. Ribadu assured that the government of President Bola Tinubu will continue to pursue those who terrorize the people and will not rest until every community was safe and every citizen could live free. He gave the assurance in Abuja when he handed over 128 kidnapped victims rescued from captivity in Kaura Namoda local government area of Zamfara State to their families. Arise News security correspondent Ferdinand Dora reports.
The condition of the victims, especially the infants, shows signs of pain and agony after several days in captivity. The rescue operation for the 128 victims takes place in Kaura Namoda local government area of Zamfara State. The National Security Advisor explains that the victims were freed during coordinated security operations carried out in 2 phases earlier in August.
This is a remarkable achievement and a testament to our resolve as a nation. Today is not just about their return. It is about reaffirming our collective resolve as a nation to create a more secure environment for every single person living within the territorial boundaries of our beautiful country. What matters most is giving relief to our people. These victims were brought to the Office of the National Security Advisor not only to secure their safety, but also to facilitate their healing process.
The NSA warns against politicizing insecurity. He also urges religious leaders and other stakeholders to promote unity and harmonious living, noting that the federal government is doing everything within its means to ensure the safety of citizens.
We have seen mothers reunited with their children, husbands with their wives, and communities made whole again. Each rescue is a victory for the Nigerian people and a crashing blow to the networks of terror that seek to undermine our peace. Our citizens remain the foundation of our democracy and our nationhood. It is for them that we fight. And it is their resilience that inspires us daily. However, we must also make a strong and clear appeal. Let us take politics out of this tragedy.
The handover of victims to their families is the latest action taken by the Office of the National Security Advisor in its bid to stem the tide of insecurity in the country. Only recently, the NSA had announced the arrest of leaders of a terrorist group linked with Al-Qaeda. It has also validated the new national security policy strategy. Ferdinand Duroja, Arise News.
Thank you, Ferdinand. Well, amid Nigeria's expensive and unreliable on-grid electricity supply, the country's residents and businesses are now opting for alternative sources, with the continent's most populous nation emerging as the second highest importer of solar panels in Africa in the 12 months spanning to June 2025. According to new data from energy think tank Ember, Nigeria imported 1,721 megawatts of solar panels, overtaking Egypt and trailing only South Africa during the period under review, as the continent's renewables equipment imports rose 60% year-on-year to reach 15,032 megawatts, compared to 9,379 megawatts in the previous 12 months. In all, 20 countries set new import records as South Africa led Africa's solar push during its 2023 power crisis. According to the reports, the cost of a solar panel in Nigeria can be recouped in less than 6 months by avoiding diesel expenses. Aside from expensive Band A billing, Nigeria has recently raised fuel prices by around 400%, making solar an attractive alternative for businesses and households struggling with soaring energy costs and high reliance on generators. All right, a number of stories, Rufai, starting off from the agricultural sector, imports, especially with the 6-month initial ban on shea nut exports, and then moving on to some security news, perhaps good news there, and then finally resting on solar panels. Your take on these stories?
Okay, so I'll start with solar panels. A lot of businesses are now going to the alternative of solar panels because the national grid has failed itself. And it's pure and simple. There have been many attempts to be able to resuscitate the national grid. I hear the Siemens deal is still on, but the promises that they gave us, if we had looked at the Siemens deal at about 5 years ago when it was supposed to kickstart, and the promises, we have not seen anything till date. And as we speak today, we've not been able to ramp up even 10,000 megawatts on the grid. We're having problems back and forth. We're having legacy debt, which the government has said they're going to clear by putting in a bond in that state to be able to clear the legacy debt in the electricity sector. You have multi-layer problems. You know, you have electricity theft. There are many things. So it's a basket case. The grid system, well, constantly having grid collapse. And when you have problems like this, what happens? People will have to resort to other alternatives like solar that is coming in. Because even the diesel they used to expend a lot of money before on, it's become a problem. There's been a hike in price and all of that. Fuel costs are going up. So solar is another alternative. The problem with solar is that when you put in the first input cost, it might cost a lot, but at the same time, things start to trickle down over the years and you start to see what you're getting for your buck. And it's also a cleaner form of energy. And when you also look at some government schemes like the rural electrification, you will see there's been importation of solar to be able to power some underserved communities that might not be on the grid. So obviously it's a trend and definitely will continue. Probably maybe when we try to fix the grid that we've been fixing for over 40, 50 years, and we get, at least even if it's 10,000 megawatts stable on the grid over a period of time, we will be able to solve this problem. And I want to also tie it to manufacturing. So it's so easy for the president to say, we ban share exports. But the president did not also announce what are the steps. Are we giving subvention and loans to set up share nut manufacturing companies that can add value to these things? And how are those companies going to run? Probably based on solar. Because if you are going to say they should run on the national grid, then it's going to be problematic for them. It's a big market, over 1.5 billion. Yes, we export all our nuts. We always advocate and say, yes, we should add value to it here. It's a welcome move. But the question is, you also have to do ancillary things to that welcome move. So I'll suggest, are we putting a subvention aside for those that want to manufacture in the space? Are we putting tax holidays aside for those that want to manufacture in the space? What are we doing to be able to make manufacturing in the space attractive? Because we have a manufacturing sector. I'm sure Mr. Kadir will come here and tell you how much losses they've made this year. And there's great possibility in the agro-allied sector. But what are we also putting in place? Where is even infrastructure to the manufacturing plant? How easy is this to move products and logistics? We have over 200,000 square kilometers of road, or close to 200,000 square kilometers of road in this country. But what's the shape of most of these roads? You travel on the highway, it's always problematic. What's the road like from farm to market? Then when you now even create all of this, what's the storage facility like? That's another one. Then what's also the market like? There's going to be some blowback, yes, because people in the EU and the likes that normally get our share butter, they will feel that the value chain has been affected greatly. But definitely we need to look inward. The other story as regards fighting insecurity, yes, I'm always happy when we see a good kumbaya story as regards fighting against insecurity. And in this regard, the National Security Advisor, yes, over 100 people have come back home after they've been kidnapped. But the question is, why were they kidnapped in the first place? Why were they kidnapped? What created the enabling environment? Because, see, it's not by bringing people back home. We've had people that have been kidnapped and been re-kidnapped in this country. If we cannot use the financial means, like the NFRU, ancillary government bodies, partnership across government bodies, to be able to squash the ecosystem that makes it easy for people to be kidnapped, you might celebrate the release of one kidnapped person, but you might see that people get re-kidnapped again. I think SBM Intelligence released a report recently that said in ransom payment this year, it was over 2.5 billion. I think last year was over $1 billion in ransom payments. That's to show you that there's an ecosystem for ransom payment. So it's not about celebrating the release of kidnapping by military raid. That's good. But how can we track the ecosystem in such a way that we even know the people this money goes to and we stop that movement? That's the bigger challenge. So while we say kudos, there's also a very big room for improvement because like some people would say, the biggest room in the world is a room for improvement. I yield the floor.
All right, room for improvement. Dr. Bati.
Okay, very quickly. Let me start with the solar importation. While it is a good development, I think we need to understand the ecosystem with regard to solar. Now, China, where lessons can be learned from, has just reached the limit of, well, the threshold of about 1,000 megawatts, or is it 1 million megawatts of solar power. But that solar power is used for the populace. People who want to boil water, people who want to iron their clothes, domestic use. So you have countries investing a lot in solar power so that they can have a lot in terms of what the people need in terms of energy considerations. Now, the residual power, on the other hand, maybe hydro, is used for industrialization purposes. So while Nigeria can say, oh, we are now importing the solar energy heavily, solar energy can only serve the purpose of the populace. It's not what you need for industrialization. Solar energy is not what you are going to use to run refineries. Solar energy is not what you are going to use to run the generaries. Solar energy is not what you are going to use to drive industrialization. So Nigeria still needs to take very seriously, a mix, what is called the energy mix. The energy mix in this regard will mean that you will need alternative sources of energy, other sources of energy, properly disaggregated. Energy for, industrialization, energy for, popular consumption. That is one part of the energy mix that Nigeria has not paid attention to. But if we say we're importing solar energy, well, it's a welcome development, but it also has its own limit. The second thing is the lingering issue in the power sector with regard to the obligations of the federal government to the GENCOs and the DISCOs. There are many liabilities that are still pending there. Now, the federal government has said there should be an audit of this debt and all of that. But that is also one matter that has to be resolved ASAP, as urgently as possible. So for government to say, well, we are investing in solar, yeah, while that is good, for the populace, for domestic consumption, you also have to worry about the other issue, about the crisis within the power sector and the crisis with regard to GENCOs and the DISCOs. However, the other thing to ask is that it's not enough to say we are importing solar power. Where is the impact of that solar power? Because the lowest common denominator will be, in my view, the people of Nigeria. Who is benefiting from it in terms of cost, in terms of availability, in terms of access. Those are the issues to worry about. Now, as for Ribadu, the National Security Advisor, Mr. Nuhu Ribadu, says, look, we'll find them, we'll hunt them down, we'll bring them to justice. Very good phrase. Now, he's saying this at an occasion where 218 victims of kidnapping from Kara-Namoda, local government of Zamfara State, are being released to their families, with the National Security Advisor saying that indeed, almost 100%, almost 90% of the persons who were kidnapped are being returned to their families. A clear affirmation in his consideration of the effort of the federal government of Nigeria to make sure that Nigerians are kept safe and everybody can live comfortably in this environment called Nigeria. Very strong objective, very good achievement, very good, to see in terms of the optics. However, the thing to say again to the NSA on the back of this advertisement of kidnapped persons who have been rescued, and also on the back of the statement, I think early last week or 2 weeks ago, about the apprehension of the Ansaru, the leader of the Ansaru Al-Qaeda affiliate and his chief of staff, Mahmouda. His own name is Mahmouda. The other one, I think, is Hussein, whatever his name is. What we're saying is that these persons should be brought to justice, and every Nigerian should feel safe in every part of Nigeria. Section 14 sub 2 of the Constitution making it very clear that government has a responsibility to ensure the security of the people. So the NSA telling us that the government is committed, I think, well, we cannot say otherwise. We expect government to be committed in that regard. As for share not. Now, the Minister of Agriculture was saying that Nigeria now has placed a 6-month ban on the export of share nut. So it was even the Vice President presiding over the last council meeting, saying that this is not an anti-trade policy. This is about value addition. Emphasis, value addition. And I think we should underscore that. Now, one of the major problems we have in this country is that Nigeria produces a lot of raw materials, but we don't have the value addition within the value chain of these products. We produce palm oil, for example. There's something called PKO, palm kernel oil, which is in very high demand in the world. But we don't have the facilities to process all of that here in Nigeria. We produce cassava. Nigeria is a net exporter of cassava to the world. We are not processing the value chain here in Nigeria. Okay, don't let me keep giving all the examples. Let me focus on share nut. Share nut, we're told, can fetch us about $300 million annually if we process here, semi-product. What do they use share nut for? They use it for body cream. They use it for pharmaceuticals, yes, and all of that. And Nigeria contributes only 1% of the $6.5 billion market that is available globally, despite the fact that we are within the belt, from Mali to Burkina Faso to Niger State to Kogi State, producing a lot of shea butter. But we cannot process that. Now, Nigeria will make more money if we are able to process in-house. So the question is, the Nigerian government making this statement, have they set up processing plants within that value chain? Have they ensured that there is a capacity, there is a skill set that is required to ensure the objective that they have defined? If I want to go for that, I would say, well, in fact, maybe the ban should be about more than 6 months. It should be about 1 year so that there can be proper assessment. But the way the Nigerian government behaves, if you look at it, they will have mixed out part of the details. Somebody will just think, oh, this will sound nice, and they will just go and announce it. Finally, IMF and IFC. Well, you see these international institutions, they have developed a habit of praising the Nigerian government, whether it's the IMF or the World Bank or the IFC. Mr. Ibeke, who is representing IFC in Nigeria, says, in terms of macroeconomic reforms, Nigeria is doing very well. Economic stability, foreign exchange stability, foreign reserve increasing, investor confidence growing, and then the other man at the IFC also says, yes, this is what we have observed. The man in IMF, his name is Ibeke. I hope he's not doing Eke. Eke? Yoruba people, they know the meaning of Eke. The man in IFC, his name is Mula. I hope that all these international institutions, they are not doing Eke and Mula on Nigeria's head. We get their point. It makes the government look good. But I would rather pay attention to the other details that they have raised. Ibeke, for example, was saying that Nigeria needs to worry about security. Nigeria has to ensure that these reforms are sustainable. We can't argue about the issue of security. This place will only attract investors if it is secure. 2, he says it has to be sustained. Well, the sustainability, I get that point also. He says Nigeria also has to worry about the power sector, that we have to invest in the power sector and make sure it works. Because what Nigeria needs is a regime of reindustrialization. Nigeria is not industrializing. Nigeria is not productive. And if you don't have power, if you don't have the energy sector functioning, how are you going to industrialize? How are you going to be productive? So these same people, IFC, World Bank, WTO, who come here and praise President Tinubu, they know the truth. They know that the reforms cannot stand on one leg. There are other dimensions to reforms. Any elementary student of economics or any educated, properly educated, not just having certificates. Any properly educated person who has read books on economics will know that there are other dimensions that this administration is not addressing. And I take that part of their contribution, that there are dimensions, whether it's social security or power or general physical security, that will need to be addressed, or sustainability that will need to be addressed, and the human face of these reforms that people just talk glibly about.
All right, let me just touch on some stories very quickly this morning. I hope I have enough time, especially the share not story. But I'll start first of all with the solar importation, the news that 60% across Africa, with Nigeria now emerging as second. I think this would then further drive this administration's push for calling for a ban on importation. There have been arguments for and against that. But I think these numbers will now begin to push that conversation again, as it has started in the middle of this year, into earlier in this year. But what I must advocate for is that it then poses an opportunity for us to see potentials in local production. In fact, this government says that the National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure, NASENI, has the capacity to locally produce solar panels. So rather than banning, let us produce locally and compete with the rest of the world and see just how well we'll do. I think that's one of the things I'll say. Now, let me go on to share not exportation and the temporary ban. Let me just clear that. They say it's a temporary ban of 6 months. And after 6 months, they will review to see whether or not to extend or to stay. Now, the reason for this direction or this decision is as a result of investing in or industrialization. They make a case for gender empowerment because a number of people who play in this sector are women, and also for rural empowerment. And you would notice, especially in the states where we have share not production, are in areas where there are smallholder farmers who hopefully can scale up. In Nigeria, share not is produced in good quantity in Kebbi State, Nasarawa State, Kogi State, or your state here just has a community where they collect and process these nuts. We also have, in other in other parts of the northern part of Nigeria. So in terms of job creation, absolutely spot on. In terms of opportunities, spot on. As was already mentioned, Nigeria has 40% of the global share product production. However, we are still playing in 1% of that. How can we push this forward? Rufai, you talked about the fact that when we announce policy directions like this, we must also ensure that there are also measures that would make it work. It's not enough to announce a ban like this. It's also important to understand the other factors that are affecting this market and also see how we can challenge them. So I had the opportunity to speak to some players in this industry and ask what are some of the challenges, because what is the advantage of a ban on share nut exportation to those who are adding value? Because there are also people who do that. There are organizations, Oreke Organics, there are many people like that who do it on a small level and can scale up given the enabling environment. Number one that was identified was cost. Now, what drives us up the cost of share nuts in itself? One of it is exportation. So these farmers would rather export and sell to international markets and local producers because, of course, it's more lucrative in that sense for them. So this ban would cut that off. In just a space of 1 year, a bucket of shell nut was melted and grounded was increased from 8,500 naira to 30,000 naira. And of course, a number of other effects. One of the things I also mentioned was the farmers unable to go to their farms. So insecurity is still posing a big challenge in the area of farming and the cost of the product at the end of the day, or the availability of it. Also, if this is going to work, we have to check our porous borders. We've heard in instances where we've had a ban on exportation on certain products, but we still have people who are able to smuggle them out by just releasing a naira or so to the people at the borders. So if this is going to work, we need to check that as well. Again, the producers talk about export costs. If we're looking at adding value and exporting the finished product, then we also look at export costs, especially in terms of custom charges. Are there going to be tariff breaks for these producers? Are we going to have opportunities for them to be able to export at a cost that is friendly to them? Beyond that is even local logistics. You talk about infrastructure, absolutely. Just in Oyo State, they say there's an area called Shaki, where there's a huge market there where a lot of the Shaki, where a lot of these producers go to get their Shaki, where they get their their share nuts, the share butter. The road leading to that place, it takes 2 days from Lagos State to get there and back just because the roads are bad. Can they fix the road there so that it makes it easier for producers to actually access this product? There's a big market for it all around. Now, a few suggestions, having spoken to them, and I'll wrap up here. Number one is access to credit. If we're going to ask them to produce and scale up production, they need to be able to access credit. A lot of these small business owners have not been able to access loan facilities, credit facilities. So what is the BOI doing? What is the Bank of Agriculture doing, especially even for the smallholder farmers? Access to grant to purchase equipment, access to markets in the nations. We have NEPC, the Nigerian Export Promotion Council. What they do, they say that, oh, well, they've been quite supportive, they don't quite well, but they can do a lot more in exposing these small businesses to markets across Africa and across the world. And so what I'm calling for them to do is, beyond setting up WhatsApp groups and, holding meetings, is to actually touch the business owners where it matters the most to them, expose them to markets, sponsor them to trips abroad for trade fairs and the likes. A number of things to get through, but the end point is this. When we announce these bans and these directions, it is important to ensure that there are other factors that would enable these businesses to thrive and for Nigeria to actually benefit from that $300 million projected revenue in a year. It is possible, but the government has to act to make it possible.